Ghost stories? Nah, we don't have anything like that around here. We do have the story of Jacob, but that's about as close as you'll get. You really want to know? Well, I'm not supposed to tell you, but... Alright, just no interrupting. I don't have the patience for that. How to describe Jacob Emory? Well, I guess you could say he was the kind of guy that you could never really take notice of. This isn't to say that he was a bad kid in any sense. Many people in this town thought he was the most reliable person for an odd job in the state. But he never really excelled in anything. He was a living proof behind the statement jack of all trades, ace of none. Most of this was due to his own lack of will. He dabbled in damn near everything this town could offer him. Automobiles, radio operations, store management, what have you. But he never stuck with anything. His friends and workers went after him about it a number of times, but everyone already got the same unsatisfying response. It just wasn't enough. Needless to say, any friends he kept were either very patient or never spoke of the matter altogether. It was probably inevitable, then, that Jacob would leave to go abroad. I don't remember where he went, but I think Gertrude down the street knew before she passed on. He'll have to scout someone if you want to get curious. In any case, no one even tried to stop him. Everyone thought that a little travel would stamp the ambition out of him, or at least feed it until it was no longer an issue. Hell, we even gave him a sending-off party, which I thought was pretty nice of everybody. So, anyway, he was gone for 6-7 years. Can't remember. You'll have to check with someone else about that, too. Anyway, he comes back eventually. And he had changed, obviously enough. He was energetic, all smiles all the time, and we all quickly learned why. He showed us a souvenir he'd brought back, a solid black stick, the length of a pencil, but the texture of chalk. We all wondered why on earth such a simple thing would promise such a spring in his step, until he gave us a demonstration. He took a piece of paper, and with the stick... God, there's got to be a better word for it. The stick... He drew a crude circle, and it dropped, and rested on the border of the paper, like a stone. It didn't leave the paper, but it acted out on it, sort of like an old movie projector on a screen. Son, I know how crazy that sounds, and if you feel like playing skeptic, then you could leave an old man in his craziness, but I know what I saw. Even if everyone's been hushed up about it, that stone just dropped. Jake even passed around the paper, and as it was being passed, it rolled around as the paper was tilted. None of us had any words for it. Hell, what was there to say? But he continued drawing demonstration after demonstration for us. Stick figures in various plays and doing everything from fighting each other to making perfect human pyramids. And we all thought it was incredible. That was all the go-ahead he needed. He announced that he was planning to put on a show to pay for rent and food, where he would draw anything the crowd members wanted. That we talked some length about, and he eventually convinced us that it would be safe. His drawing is ethical, and the attention would not go anywhere outside of the town's borders. If it had not been so swept up in the moment, I might have read the signs right then and there and saved that sorry son of a bitch by snapping the terrible thing in half. But I was younger. We all were. And we saw no problem with encouraging him with what we perceived as an incredible experience to be shared with everyone else. Now, I didn't have any big radio or television connections, mind you, and the internet didn't come around for another decade, so he did what all others on a shoestring budget did. He advertised his show with flyers. Flyers may not mean anything to you city folk, but in a small town, they gain a fair glance over from time to time. And what's more, Jacobs managed to stick out by having little stick figures jump up and down and whatnot to get people's attention. His first show must have gotten nearly 60 or so people, probably a lot more than that. And his shows were fantastic. Some would shout out a scene from a play or comedy sketch, and Jacob's hand would fly over a white wall like a bird. He'd been holding back when he made that stone. That's for damn sure. His illustrations were all spot on, and he could make an incredible human figure in minutes. Come to think of it, I don't remember any of his scenes lasting more than 10 minutes to make. They were really well done scenes too. Not only could you see a knight charging a castle, but Jake would draw the castle's interior as well, like a wedding cake split down the middle. So you could see the knight scale the walls, fight his way through the levels to the dungeon, fight back out to the princess, and make a leap off to the castle and onto his getaway horse, all in a complete silence. Not realistic, no, but that was part of the appeal. None of us went there expecting something real. When a scene or sketch was finished, either the characters would leave off a wall or he'd cover the wall with white paint. This was good in a way. It gave these shows a time limit, so that when he'd finished with all 4 walls on the room, everyone knew the show was over until the paint dried. Jake, meanwhile, was changing in a bad way. I mentioned that upon his return, he'd been extremely energetic. Well, that energy, that vitality, or fervor, or whatever you want to call it, it never really left him. Not for an instant, far from it. It seemed to grow in him, and he enjoyed it all too much. His eyes grew wider. He slept gradually less and less over time. His statements and opinions more radical and frenzied, and though he never was a pushover, he was starting to make people nervous in his company. A month or 2 passed, and Jake's audience grew like wildfire. Nearly everyone in the town paid to see his art in action, and he had to rent out larger and larger places for them to sit. He now didn't stop after one scene was done. He moved directly on to the next, putting on the next, blank space in the wall, sometimes to the intriguing effect of causing scenes to mingle, which the crowds loved. The subject matter got more wild and immoral. The monsters got bizarre and creative, the fighters used more impossible weaponry, all for the sake of the crowd's entertainment. Jake got steadily more indulgent, which he figured was more from the money, and he became a drinker and a womanizer, neither of which got rid of that vitality, by the way. Some of the women claimed that they had woken up in the middle of the night to see him scribbling, with that stick on a drawing pad, gigantic grin on his face. And while most of them said that they'd assumed he was drawing them in the nude, they'd rumored that 1 or 2 of them got glances at the notepad. Those anonymous few supposedly said that those drawings absolutely weren't nude pictures, but neither of them, whoever they are, will say what the drawings were. Don't bother looking for the notepads or flyers, though. They're all gone now. I'm getting off track. The point is, he was hitting the bottle, and that's important, because it was the drinking that would eventually ruin everything. On the night of one of his performances, as he walked out in front of his cheering crowd, it was immediately apparent to everybody that he was completely drunk. I was in the front row, and I could smell the bourbon on him from 10 feet away. Then the show started. He went through a bunch of sketches and scenarios the crowd recommended, and when at the end somebody asked that he draw himself, everyone cheered at the idea. I guess they'd wondering what his creations thought of him. Then he eventually obliged. No sooner had Jake finished connecting the final 2 lines on his coat than every single character across the vast expansive wall all stopped and looked directly at the illustration. Lovers stopped kissing, clowns stopped laughing, robots stopped fighting, pirates, everything stopped and looked at the Jacob illustration. The crowd died almost instantly. I remember Jake's face at that moment, pale white, full of terrible comprehension of his mistake, and looking desperately for the cans of white paint he'd forgotten to put out before the show. Everyone else, they were looking at the fake Jake. That Jake reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a black stick of his own, and as we all watched, drew a door. He pushed on his side, and the door swung open, allowing him to walk through onto the floor of the auditorium. The rest was absolute hellish pandemonium. People screamed and ran for the exits as Jacob's characters, both those currently on the wall and those who had previously left before being covered up, ran out of their own exit, throwing pies, shooting lasers, blowing fire and poison at the impossible. I was near enough to the exit to escape, and gave only one backwards glance. The scene will haunt me forever. Jacob Emory was being dragged by his creations, kicking and screaming through the door his copy had made. The auditorium burned down, obviously enough, but I had no idea how many characters escaped, what happened to the fake Emory, or how many people died. The fire brought the fire department from the nearest cities up to 100 miles away. They in turn brought the police force, which brought the government, which hushed up everything. They took the flyers and any art of Jake made, and swore everyone to secrecy, or else life detainment. The fire was blamed on cigarettes in the garbage during a basketball game, and we all eventually went on with our lives. Jacob was made to never have existed. In retrospect, I realized everything. Jacob hadn't been creating illustrations. Illustrations don't move, much less act or attack. They're just images people see, shadows made to look like real things. Jacob had been making life, actual thinking things in some alternate dimension, using a power that was never meant to fall into moral hands. He'd gotten drunk on his power. His punishment was probably well deserved. Incidentally, the government screwed up on 2 different accounts. They did a damn good job silencing everyone else, but proof remains. The ruins are still there, The auditorium's ruins. I hear they're going to start reconstruction soon, which will wipe out any remaining evidence someone could definitely see, but I went back there once. Several years after the fire, just once, among the rubble, covered in ash, I saw something squirming. I looked closer. It was Jacob Emory's hand on the wall, exactly like it had been there 3 years ago, constantly flailing, as if the body was supposed to be attached to it was still writhing in flames. That was mistake number 1. Number 2 were those creations. Like I said, I don't know how many escaped, nor how many the government agents found and caught, but I will say only this. Those tall grass meadows out in the outskirts of town, don't go into them. Ever. You're asking me about those white figures you've seen at night, right? This town doesn't have ghost stories.